there's always been controversy regarding Mortal Kombat. Did you expect that when you were working on the game?
No, because again, we designed the game for only 200 arcade cabinets. So
Wow.
you're going to only be an arcade. That's all they told us.
So when you were working on it, did you expect it to become the mega moneymaker,
Nobody
worldwide
expected that.
phenomenon that it became?
No one expected it, not even Midway. Originally, when I pitched the game to John and I pitched the game to Midway, they originally said no. That the idea of a fighting game was really, at least as far as when I was in the room with them and heard what they said they liked the idea of a fighting game, but they were going to take that idea and they're going to approach Jean-Claude Van Damme with that idea. So again, I was a little, I remember it because I didn't work for that thing, and I was like, crap. They're going to take any ideas I gave them and give it to Van Damme. And though I'll pay for a Van Damme movie, I am a fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme. This is a fantasy, geeky game, and I didn't think that Jean-Claude Van Damme didn't have that badge of honor to do a game like this. It was going to be Jean-Claude Van Damme would do a mainstream game, and I didn't want to do this was not designed to be a mainstream game. So then they're like, okay, we'll do 200 arcade cabinets. So when you're doing 200 arcade cabinets, in the arcade, they're 13, 14 years old. They do chores to get their quarters to shove into the machine. So it is a totally different audience. It's not a 6-year-old at home. It's not a babysitter, which my mom called Nintendo when we had Nintendo. Go in front of the babysitter and let me see what game you're playing. So we never expected it, and with the violence, we didn't design it for later on the audience that it was pitched for.
Interesting. So who created, I guess, that concept of like the fatalities and the brutalities? Because with a lot of fighting games, like your Street Fighters, your Soul Calibers, they don't have that, and they also don't have, I guess, as much graphic violence. So what was not necessarily what was the point of it, but how did you all arrive with the decision to make it so brutal and including the fatalities?
Yeah,
that's like my favorite part personally.
Yeah, a lot of during most of the filming, it was just John and I, Tobias and I. During most of the filming, Ed being the producer had more things on his plate to do than to be, especially a game that's only going to be 200 arcade cabinets. So I wouldn't see him that much during the earlier parts of MK. But during one of the things, John was just like, what'd be cool if there's some way to finish the guy, and you got to do a finishing move where the guy is just going to do that, and then you're just going to think of a finishing move. So, and then eventually that would be like finish him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I would just like, okay, it would be cool first I wanted to punch through the guy, and he said no. And then I wanted to really, really beat the guy, and he was like, well, let's film it, but I don't know about that. And then I was like, it would be cool if I just, there was when I was studying karate in the 70s, there was a guy called Matsuyama, Japanese sensei, who would fight bulls. Wow. Like the bull would be coming, and he would condition his hands so much that he would friggin' hit the bull or chop the bull's horn off. This guy was just the human body is amazing, because he conditioned his body to do this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and people think it's tough, but that's what necessity, or that the traditional martial arts are old, and they used to do that. What are you going to do today? Well, you go over there and punch that tree for 3 hours. And you start at 4 years old and you punch that tree till you're 14 years old. Your fists are a brutal weapon. That doesn't happen now. Everybody's like, oh, traditional martial arts are not deadly enough anymore. No, it's the conditioning. We have education system. It's you no longer sell your child to a warlord to put food on the table for the other kids, which happened back in the day. You were a full-time warrior. You didn't learn to read or write. You learned how to punch trees. You learned how to grab the tree bark. Today, what are you going to do today? Grab the tree bark. All right? If you grab it harder, I'll give you a piece of tofu. Oh, okay. If you grab it even harder, I will give you a small piece of meat. Oh, okay. 6 years later, all of a sudden you grab a guy by the throat, or just grab a guy by like this. You're a killing machine.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, Matsuyama did that. It would be cool if I could punch the guy so hard that his head would go flying off. And so that was the first. So that was the first fatality in honor of Matsuyama.
That's awesome. So with your martial arts background and your training, how were your like early beginnings? Was it like Matsuyama where you were just punching the tree until you were bloody?
I don't know about punching the tree, but it was a little tougher. The first art I got a black belt in was judo.
Okay.
And because I was not 18 years old when I received my black belt, and it took me almost 6 years to get to the black belt level, I was not 18, I was 16, I could not wear the black belt.
What?
They gave me a brown belt with a red stripe in it, which meant that I knew the knowledge of a black belt, but because I was not an adult, it wasn't just about learning the martial art, it was about responsibility. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't able to serve, I wasn't able to buy liquor, I couldn't buy smoke, or anything like that. So I was not an adult. I couldn't drive, so I was not an adult, so I could not wear a black belt. Though I took the test, 3-day test to be a black belt, I could not wear the black belt because you were a kid and you don't have that responsibility. So now you're 9 years old and you could get a black belt and wear it. Back then, right? It was a little bit. Things were a little bit deeper and a little bit more responsibility.
Okay.
As far as getting that thing. So that's how So after that, I loved the martial arts. In '85, I trained in mainland China. And it's kind of like professional gymnastics where the instructor hits you with a stick. Because if he hits you with your stick, you make a correction much faster than just yelling at a person. Don't do it that way, you're going to get hurt. Or the technique is not perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's not really about, it's about energy, and traditional martial arts is about energy and you being as efficient as you can be. You don't worry about the other guy. If he's more efficient than you, no. You worry about your own efficiency. If he's stronger, then you have to use technique. You have to use science to overcome him, strategy. So you've got to study like that. So in China, they would hit you. And so all of a sudden, you would be motivated. And it makes sense. I mean, because they thought, like my instructors back then thought that someday I would be fighting to the death with my hands, with my body, because that's the way they were taught. They were older and they were taught that. I have it's kind of weird to go off on a tangent, but I have instructors who were like persecuted during the Cultural Revolution, where they had to use it to defend themselves. Otherwise, you would get taken and tortured. So they not only used it for self-defense, but they also would get in a match where they were like, okay, we're going to sign this paper saying that you and your students won't come after my family and my students if I kill you. Okay, we're going to. It's all about ego. So we sign this thing. They get in the ring, and there probably is going to be a death. Because those guys have been punching trees and grabbing bark. You know what I mean?
Mortal Kombat for real.
Yeah. So the traditional martial arts. A lot of people don't really see how brutal they can be, and where a lot of times you're just the other guy's coming at you just as hard. So you might come at the guy and crush his skull and kill him, but it wasn't like there's just no way out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's the ego too. Those guys had huge egos. I'm gonna, who in the hell gets in the ring with a bull? Running at you, and they're like, oh, ready? He's coming. Right? That's craziness. Traditional martial arts are crazy, and you don't see that type of thing. And it's not. You can't put it in a ring because otherwise you're gonna have death. I mean, in the old days, it was very common for people to have broken femurs because the other guy would kick them in the leg. And they've been kicking the tree all day long. So when they kick you in your leg, your femur, the thickest bone in your body, is going to break. So that's not, you can't put it in the ring. That's not MMA because it's not
sport.
It's not a sport. Somebody's going to die.
Yeah.
It's okay to poke you in the eye. You know, it's okay for me to throw you by sticking my thumb into your skull. It's graphic. And then putting you over his shoulder in a joint lock. You know, so I'm going to break your fingers and I'm going to break your elbow and lock your shoulder so it's going to dislocate. And then in the end, I'm going to grab you by your eyeball and skull and throw you over. So by the time you hit the floor, the impact's not going to kill you. I killed you by throwing you. It's really, really brutal. And that science is kind of, that type of thing is lost because we have the gun now. But it is like, yeah, so Mortal Kombat is like kind of that type of craziness.
It's like the real, whoa, that's
Yeah.
wild. So you are multidisciplined, yeah, in
Yeah.
different martial arts.
Yeah.
How many have you mastered?
I actually, like it's an old school master, so when I reached the level of master, it wasn't because I already knew 8 systems, complete, but including weapons, because a lot of them have weapons and some of them have up to 22 weapons, so 22 different weapons, 8 different styles. But what made me a master is one day I was practicing and my master comes up to me, he's like, oh, you have the connection. You have the mind-body connection. Meaning like it's kind of like you're aware of your body and the technique, and you can throw the technique perfectly in accordance with your body. And then other masters can recognize it, kind of like, oh, and they call it the connection. So he's like, oh, you're connected. You are now a master.
Nice.
So it wasn't the learning of the system. It was reaching those techniques that allow you to have that mind-body connection, which is like a seamless. So it's like going from bullets to laser beam.
It's like when Bruce Leroy got the glow and
That movie rocked.
That's my favorite.
I love you.
I met him once and I didn't have words for him.
Yeah.
That's
I met him once. He's a cool guy.
He's great.
You know what? That's the one thing. I'm like a minor celebrity, but when I go to a convention, I could go right in front of the line.
Yes, because he's like, I'm a celebrity
Yeah, and
too.
everybody's like, oh, you're the Mortal Kombat guy. I love you too. Can we take a picture? Oh yes, let's take a picture. Man.
So obviously people still like recognize you from Mortal Kombat, and they like respect that you put in, kind of, you built the foundation for what Mortal Kombat is today.
Yeah, I think it's just that because the game is old too.
Yeah.
So all the kids who used to play it are adults. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I did this year 8 international events, Comic-Cons and gaming conventions in other countries. And so a lot of times when I go somewhere, it isn't unusual for someone to cry. And it's not that like I'm an awesome person, but that connection. It's Mortal Kombat was us, like a videotape of us. And then when they see that, it turns them back. So they're like, oh man, they're crying. Oh, you're right. Yeah, man, me and my brother used to play with you.
Yes.
Or guess what? You helped me through the you helped me through the toughest time.
Yes.
My parents were arguing. So I was in the basement playing you, and thank you for that. And really, I didn't do anything. But I'm connected to, for some people, it's connected to some strength. Like Mortal Kombat, or I take in martial arts. And I've taken martial arts because of Mortal Kombat, and I'm disciplined. And so it's not very, it's not pro-violent. These people actually are less violent because of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Oh, there have been many days where I'm just like, oh my god, I could punch someone in the head.
Yeah.
And then I just play Mortal Kombat and I'm like, okay, I'm fine now.
Yeah, I was in Argentina once, and this guy freaked out, and he's kind of just freaking out and stuff like that, and he's just like all nervous and stuff like that. I was like, "You all right?" And then somebody later, he walked away, and one of the guys told me, "You know, that guy has 30 million followers on YouTube." And he couldn't even barely speak to you because he was just so geeking out. And I was just like, what? That's
amazing.
Yeah, it is really deep.
So is it something where you're kind of like, wow, I can't believe that even now, like, this is happening? Or are you just like, I'm used to it because I'm great and awesome and I recognize it?
No, I think not only martial arts, but being from like a geek and having those, you know what I mean? At one time, geek was not a badge of honor.
Yes.
Right now, today, being a geek is like, holy cow, you're a creative guy. You're, you know, like that. So at one time, I remember that thankfully I did learn judo and karate and Japanese jiu-jitsu because there was people who would pick on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all of a sudden you throw them, and then all of a sudden you're, oh, it's cool. You know what I mean? Yeah.
He's a nerd, but
he's a nerd, but he'll throw you. and so that has like never left, because it's like, again, when I go to events or when I'm doing like this stuff, the questions never get old. Even though some people are like some people, oh, don't you get tired of the same questions? Never, because it's always different, because the person next to you is different. It's not like the same, you're not saying the same thing over, it sounds the same, but it is not the same.
Yeah, because I mean, you have years and years of learning and experiences, and it's just, this is amazing for me. Like,
it's amazing for me. I haven't been to Philadelphia in like over 20 years. There used to be a martial art tournament in this area, and I used to compete. But and then somebody from Philly, I don't even know if they're around anymore. A magazine, Asian World of Martial Arts magazine. They still around?
They're still around.
Okay, so they're
but
based.
They're no longer in Chinatown. They're on the northeast.
Okay.
Ashton Road.
So the owners hired me to do a photo shoot, and they brought me out to Philly for like 4 days, even though the photo shoot was one day, and they showed me around town, and so it was like, I really enjoyed it, and it, like, you know, I have friends out here. I haven't seen them in 20 years or that long, but still, and all of a sudden this, you know, I got Nerdtino invited me out, and thank you, and I was like, you know, I get to reconnect with people. You know, there's people that I've known like on social media for 6-7 years that I've never met live, but it feels like feels like we are already friends. Like we already, like, oh, you already know me. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I know him. Oh, you know, it's kind of really, you know, it's fortunate to hook up with other people. Yeah.
I know. I was talking to Tom yesterday, and he was like, "Yeah, Daniel's here, but he's out exploring." Yeah. And that's really cool. It's really like, it's because I've done this a few times before, but I've also done it with people who aren't as humble, and so it's really cool, and it's an honor to be up here with you.
It's an honor to be here with you, answering questions, because it truly is. Yeah. Yeah, we're not so different.
Yeah, because I mean, I was one of those people who, you know, would just kind of lose myself in playing Mortal Kombat, and like even now, like a couple days ago, I just was like, I'm just gonna play. I haven't played in a while. Like, let me play, and then 2 hours later, I'm just like,
cool.
Where am I? But yeah, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.